Swedish architect, urban researcher and facilitator of urban transformation, and Taras Dacuk, graphic designer, architect and urbanist, member of the NGO city.reboot. So welcome, the floor is yours.
Hello to everyone. Maybe we will start with small introductions of each of us, of ourselves. As was mentioned, I'm part of NGO Mista.rebut from Lutsk. This is our city. Today I presented exhibition, small excursion this morning around our city with my thoughts about what is its strengths and its weaknesses, how I would like to see our city develop. And today I wanted to discuss with Johannes some ideas, maybe how our cities they could help us in different situations, how they can inspire us, because there is this quote that at first we built our cities and then they built us. And it's very important, especially in our present context, when we need support from each side, and cities they could be a great support for people as well, I believe. But first I'd like to listen a short introduction from Johannes.
Thank you very much. I can't see you because of the beautiful lights here, but I can imagine you are still in the room. So it's an honor to be here, of course. Oh, wow, that's nice. Okay, back again. Yes, it was a pity. I don't speak Ukrainian, and this last presentation here from Sumi, I guess it was very, very interesting, and I got a brief translation, and it's so unbelievable for us coming to you and understanding the bravery you are undertaking on a daily basis, and it feels a bit strange to start to talk about projects in this context, but I guess that is how life is. It contains these two opposites, and I've been an architect my whole life, and I've been working a lot in urban design or urban planning, one could say, and it's a very, in a sense, the more you work with cities or extending cities or architecture generally, the more interesting it becomes on the human level. And we had I think, fantastic introduction yesterday about what is human scale. And because I was taught about human scale. We used human scale a lot during my education in the 80s, and also in my practice a lot, the human scale. And for us, human scale was really the ability to see the child's face from your balcony. That was sort of the dimension or the proportion of human scale. So if you stepped out on the 5th floor, looked down in the courtyard, you could see the face of your child. And in a sense, but coming here, you started to use yesterday the human scale in a different way. And someone of you said something so interesting, used 3 examples of the human scale. And one thing was the opportunities, that in an urban human scale, the opportunities are present, which is very interesting. And the institutions are available. And the third thing was that actually the city itself, that the city spaces and the infrastructure, techniques, everything that build the cities are present. And if you could actually translate these three things, the infrastructure, it could be seen as the brotherhood of the city. Being, brotherhood or sisterhood. And the institutions, they are actually about equality. And the opportunities, of course, that's the freedom. So freedom, equality, and brotherhood. Suddenly we have the three words from the French Revolution I felt yesterday when it was described. And then they are, of course, quite fundamental to the European culture. And, of course, you are as much European as I am. So that was my saying hello to you about human scale and being here.
Should we check our presentation?
I don't know. Seriously, these are just boring projects and buildings. So they can run, or I don't know. Maybe we end up in something where it's relevant. Mm-hmm. This is just whatever.
And the thing I want to maybe not discuss, but to keep in focus during our discussion is that context and this contrast you mentioned between existential goals of Ukraine as a nation, but at the same time we have a lot of problems like demographic challenges, and make our cities a better place to live and to feel yourself safe and to see these opportunities. It's very important because it could be one of those instruments how we can solve those demographic challenges. And those challenges, they can't wait, unfortunately. And that's why we need to see this contrast and to work on all of that important challenges right now. And because of that, we can't focus on something one. We need to have a few things in our focus. We need to work a little bit here, a little bit there, and we need to choose those decisions which made the most effect, which are the most efficient for us right now. And those your projects, they are very impressive. They are big. But as you said, they are boring for you because maybe they don't have those challenges, very difficult challenges. And maybe I'd like to hear something from you about this context and about traits that we want to program for us in our cities right now. How our cities, they could help us to feel better, because everyone is very tired, I believe. Everyone thinks that he's at his limit. We are making a lot and it still seems like it's not enough, but we can stop, and cities could help us feel a little bit, maybe 0.5%, maybe even smaller, but still a little bit better. And that's what I want to see in my city, and it's very interesting to hear what you think about it, and maybe you have some abstract or maybe even specific advices about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is of course the unbelievable situation in which you are in this kind of, as you said, existential, the survival, and yet how you manage to, in parallel, actually live and live strong. At least it's for us, looking upon you from the outside, it's, first of all, it's hard, it's, as I said already, it's it's quite impossible to grasp. But this is my second time here in Ukraine, and already the first one was so apparent, your capacity to deal with these two opposites, survival and also looking ahead. And I think what I have seen here the last few days, I arrived a couple of days ago and had the chance to look at the city and see projects and meet so many people and talk to so many young, powerful individuals. And maybe it's just a personal interpretation, but it's so clear that this attack on you also brings so much clarity and so much power and so much so many thoughts digging so deep into the society. And I think when I compare with the absolute opposite, I think, which is Sweden, we share the same colors in the flag, but we are actually the absolute opposite. It's super safe, very rich, everything is so organized, and the war is hundreds of years back in time. I mean, the last time we were at war, we were fighting against you, the Ukrainians. I mean, and we don't remember. I have no idea what we did down here, but probably. And then, which means that we are so often, as a society, so far away from the power of the existential. And it's a luxury to say this, or look upon you, or be part of you emotionally. But I think the cities, looking after one city from the extreme situation in Sami to here, which is much more safe, but looking after is such a fantastic sign, which we are doing as well. We are trying to make the cities better and better, but from an already very stable level. I don't know if I responded to it, but I also have seen so many fantastic examples during the walks we've had in the last few days, where you start to make things beautiful. We went in, Julia and me and a colleague, we went into a courtyard just behind, very close to the Institution of Mathematics. And the courtyard, typical Khrushchev buildings, and the courtyard, someone was working on the courtyard, and suddenly the beauty came out, and one could start to see and sense where the children were playing, and it's so amazing that this is happening in parallel, that you focus on things to make it more beautiful and accessible and more livable. And that is just, it's marvelous.
Yeah, thank you. And the question,
I didn't respond to your question.
It doesn't matter.
Well, we're talking. We're probably both a little bit autistic. We have our own sort of disappear in some kind of inner thoughts. Well, sorry?
In a good way.
In a good way, but let's hope we can. Yeah.
You are observing this contrast we have a little bit from outside, but had you maybe thoughts about war could become much more closer to you, and what do you think about it? And maybe you have some thoughts how life could change. It's not a very pleasant question, but it appears in my mind while you was talking right now to my previous topic. You cannot respond to this question as well if it's not comfortable, but I'd like to ask it because it appears from my mind and I'm really interested about your thoughts about it as well.
About if the war could come to be extended, or yeah. I mean, I think the strange thing is that, of course, Europe is afraid now, as is always, because and just so you know, we are daily in the media, in everything we are talking about you as protecting us, and it's super serious. It's a constant thing. But of course, this is individual. I was brought up by a father who was in the Korean War, and I was as a child, very afraid, very, very afraid, every day as a child for the war, and as always, I mean, it's a big part of my imagination of life, of course. So, and a funny thing, since we are so autistic, like I said, and what time, by the way, we're just talking.
We still have 15 minutes,
15 minutes.
5 minutes to talk and 10 minutes for questions from audience.
Okay, about the war. When I was a child, when I was 9, I remember I came down in the kitchen and the newspaper was on the kitchen table. And on the front cover was this girl from Vietnam, you know, the girl running during napalm. And I said to my mother, we have to adopt her. Mother, we need to bring her to the family. We were 5 kids and a lonely mother, so we needed her. And then my mother said, no, she's dead. And then, late in life, just a few years ago, I met her, and I said to her that when I was 9, I wanted you to become my sister, and she said she's the same age, we're both 60 or 60 plus, and then she said. And we just talked for half an hour, and then suddenly she said, okay, but I'm your sister, 50 years later. And so we have stayed in contact. She's now a UN ambassador for peace, love and understanding, we can say. And she's coming to Sweden next summer for a visit and representing the United Nations as an ambassador. And so we're talking more or less every week, my new sister, finally, after 50 years. And I think it's just a strange story, but it's also so important. I remember when I met her that the world suddenly was so tiny in time and space. 50 years of wishing to have this sister, and suddenly she turned up, and so the world wasn't bigger than an orange, even in time. And I think when this nightmare is over, I think the trauma that you have lived through and will continue to live through for generations has been so spread, and in time and space, I think this has brought, this is my hope at least, that the world has shrunken to something very tiny during these horrible years. And the darkness on one side, which is very clearly darkness, and you representing the opposite, the respect for human being, the respect for the future, and the respect for freedom and brotherhood and equality. I think this will be a fantastic platform for us, for our future collaboration, and in the rebuilding of Ukraine at all levels into a very human scale nation. So that is my personal hope.
Wow.
I don't know. Sorry, I got carried away. This is, but you get what I mean.
Well, yeah, but it's very interesting and inspiring to listen. for me at least. And you mentioned that trauma, and I also like to bring this idea to our discussion. We talked earlier about trauma happened, and that it's impossible to go back before this trauma. You only can go through this trauma and become stronger, but you will never become someone you was before. And that's what happens now with people and with cities as well. And I remember you said it's interesting topic for you how cities are very similar to people, to one individual, but in different scales. Maybe it's also interesting topic to discuss and to look at this human scale of the cities through this trauma and through remembering these traumas in the city, in the urban form.
Yeah, but I didn't understand, of course, the previous conversation here regarding Sumi, but cities and people, of course, that's why we protect cities, and that's why the trauma is always when you demolish a building, for example, it takes so much out of a person. If you love a building and suddenly it's gone, it is really this entire very complicated issue of what is a home, which is another lecture or conversation actually. But and I think one message I could, after I think a long life in architecture and urban design, is that future is only made with care, and you can't plan or organize or facilitate restoring cities without care down into the craftsmanship. You can see it outside here, or you can see it in this building, which is quite spectacular building in a sense. You can see the way it's built, and you can see how KGB will be transformed into actually its opposite, to a public building in the middle, in the heart of your city. And if it's done with care, then this care will influence constantly in, because, and that's how when you touch an old crafted door or a window, not a plastic window, but if you can touch the craftsmanship, it becomes, you can relate to it. And that is how the rebuilding process needs to be done, I think, through the craftsmanship, because that kind of beauty is building, is restoring humans, absolutely, and restoring, in a sense, could help to restore traumatic experiences. Beauty always does. Beauty and nature.
Thank you for this maybe kind of too abstract but still very inspiring conversation. I have feeling that we need to give this audience a little bit of details, so maybe we will go to our presentation to finish, and then we will go to questions from audience.
No, I think since we have been autistic and completely something, so let's talk instead. We can look at pictures another time, or
okay,
yeah, next time.
So maybe there are some questions from the audience.
Oh, nice.
Hi, there was one that we were struggling with the mic. Thank you so much. So you ended your previous sentence with nature, and I'm from the Ukrainian Climate Network, so obviously the question will be about nature. So what is actually the role of nature in between these two realms, the architectural and the urban realm, and the realm of the people living? So because we kind of seek rest in nature, but nature can be also our teacher on how to build and how to plan. So maybe you can reflect more on this aspect. Thank you so much.
Do you know how this works? I'm too too unintelligent for the techniques. Yeah, it's super interesting. I tend to say always that landscape first. In planning, for example, and we need several boys here to sort out the techniques. Or I have destroyed it, probably. No, but I mean, and that's it's of course complex. But if let's say you extend Lutsk, you add another layer of Lutsk. What do you have? Of course, you have Lutsk, the urban web of existing, but you have also the landscape influence, and you have the water, the river, and so when I just now suddenly took an example here. Yeah, you can see many examples.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, but you saw. But I've tried during my entire career to keep that in mind, landscape first, because that is, again, how you minimize the abstract thing of the city. City is quite abstract, but it survives through people, through the landscape, through the water, through these relationships. And if you forget landscape or these elements, you're lost completely. Short, I think.
Good afternoon. My question would be about, so here at УкрУrбанФорум we feel quite in a comfortable bubble, like everyone understands each other quite perfectly and without no need to go some extra explanation or so from half of a word. And for me, I was wondering, maybe you have any thoughts, any reflections, recommendations, tips or so on how to communicate beyond your bubble when it comes, for example, because I'm also from a Ukrainian climate network, about the importance of the landscape, nature, protection and so climate adaptation, or anything about how to make our cities more just, more people-oriented. Maybe from your experience as architect, when you have to defend your projects or so any ideas? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's of course a very long and very complex topic. But yeah, I wonder where to start. We had a conversation yesterday about precisely this, and because we are specialists, of course, in different fields, and we have our agendas. Is it possible to switch off then I need to relate, otherwise I'm lost. No, but I think like urban planning, you've seen a couple of projects here. It's one Stockholm and one Vienna, and it's all about, you can see my orange color here, and you can see the thoughts about movements and landscape and long-term connection over the coming 100 years, and it's big and it's 50,000 people. But what remains in when do we step outside the border? I think is when we talk about and when we illustrate a very sincere understanding of judgment, about scale, about what is a street, quite simple things. How can landscape interact with an urban fabric, and how does it interact with other areas, for example. And that is where I always try to start, by doing simple sketches, small hand perspectives or plans, and talk about, if we stay here, this is the huge Vienna project, and of course the clients at the time, they said, this is where you design, not here. That were the typical clients, you know. And I said, no, I'm designing this because sometime in the future, these will be neighborhoods. This is 25 years ago. And then the client said, no, they don't want to be part of this. These are villas, they have a protected green corridor, and these are apartments and 50,000 people, so they don't want to be neighbors. And these are, in a sense, when you need to step outside, you need to step outside the profession, and you need to be very stubborn, and you need to be able to protect your ideas or visions or the feelings here, and you have to foster, in a sense, your judgment. Human nature is not isolated. Even if this looks very isolated as an idea, abstract, but it will only survive if it's part of the city. And the same is for nature, and I think as long as you are working clearly with people, you can say there's always beautiful solutions. You mentioned, I don't know if you exactly mentioned it during your speech half an hour ago, but the nature-based, you know, there are nature-based solutions, but they are not only nature-based, they are common sense, and they are also, from an historic point of view, the way we have built cities during thousands of years. There is extending its dependency on landscape, dependency on trade between people and understanding and culture. So I think getting out of the bubble is about working on the judgment and asking people to be part of your judgment, and that you listen to other people, that you listen and transform into a human. There's a city is just about human exchange in space and time, and be very, very strong. And I think this is precisely what I've heard constantly during these days, that you've already done the big part. You have, contrary to the Soviet heritage of disrespect for human people and relationship, you are building up an enormous respect and interest, or a culture of its opposite, the darkness, and you are doing the brightness. You're doing and all countries have done it over the last 100 years, but you are doing it in Express, Ukraine Express. And that's why, returning to a question, I think urban design is about relationships, and that's the beauty and responsibility, and that is also leadership, because it's not happening automatically. It's dependent on this judgment, and it's dependent on being brave to show it, because it's natural. Sorry, it was a long reply.
We have one last question, but I would like to ask you to make it very short.
Okay, yes.
The answer as well, because we have to finish.
First of all, thank you for your slightly autistic but still very interesting discussion. It led to many philosophical constructs in our heads, I'm pretty sure. But you've been talking about trauma, and we have this Ukrainian author, her name is Vera Hileva, and she's been recently talking about how we as a nation, Ukrainians, still haven't comprehended the World War II in our minds. And then we had, before that, Holodomor, World War II, and then another starvation period for whole country. Then we had this Soviet Union occupation for so many years. Then we had our independence. Then we had First Revolution, Maidan, Russian-Ukrainian war, full invasion. So it's been a lot. And we as people, as nations, still don't understand the scale of this tragedy. And I'm pretty sure that buildings store this trauma as well, not less than we as humans. And it's hard to love the parts of the country, of the city, that has been made because of this generational traumas. And as you've seen before, as we were walking through the street, you've seen this building, what was done to it. What can we do, like walking out this door right now, as people, as citizens, what can we do in practical terms to accept this trauma and make it work for our advance?
Yeah, well, who am I to say? Yeah, we of course, theoretically, we know about your history very well. Of course, we have had it in school, and we have But I think if we go to the very closest, we are sitting in the KGB building, and you are transforming it to a palace for people. It's a very communist word, but you are transforming it, and you are just having these fantastic conferences. You are inspiring one another and building this power in parallel to the threat, and you are making good friends. And then I think, but that's very individual. I have a background as a carpenter. That I always build something, houses, or that's my weekends. And I think I mentioned it also that urban design and architecture is craftsmanship. And I think there's nothing as good as teach yourself or learn how to build. Be gardeners or being builders, and grasping, just change one house, change the plastic windows on one house, and you can never stop to make real windows. And the windows are the eyes of the buildings, and beautiful windows will survive forever. So I think what you do, I guess Europe will be here to do all sorts of things in the long run, and people and companies and individuals from everywhere, and so will you. This is in a sense, your unbelievable destiny, with all respect. And the craftsmanship of the future is one thing of dealing with it. To become a gardener, to plant trees, doing things directly, and like the courtyard we were in, it's fantastic to see how suddenly people start to look after, to care, to think about relationships again in parallel to the disaster. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.